This podcast is sponsored by Active Skin Repair, a skin health company helping people heal with natural, non-toxic, medical-grade ingredients. Honestly, it's only the one first aid supply we have right now because Active Skin Repair can be used to treat a wide range of skin issues, including cuts and scrapes and burns and sunburn, which is huge here in Arizona, rashes and other types of skin damage. It's also safe and non-toxic, making it suitable for use on all skin types. I use it on my son's mosquito bites all the time. And it can even be used on rosacea and eczema and acne-prone skin.
Yeah, it's crazy. And seriously, with over 500,000 happy customers and thousands of 5-star reviews and ingredients that are safe and clean and can be used from your youngest member of your household all the way up to your oldest, everybody has one simple solution for all of your family's skincare needs.
So go visit www.activeskinrepair.com to learn more about Active Skin Repair and get 20% off your order. Use code NOGUILT. That's activeskinrepair.com to get 20% off your order. Use the code NOGUILT.
You are creating trust and connection and lines of communication with your kid. And conversations about puberty are not always about the anatomical body parts, the physiology. Conversations during this time are about friendship and loneliness and love and respect and joy and sadness and laughter.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I'm your host, Joanne Crone, joined by the delightful Brie Tucker.
Why, hello, everybody. How are you?
Hey, if you're listening to this today and you have a kid who is either in puberty or about to go through puberty or has gone through puberty, so I think that's everyone. It's everyone, Brie. We've covered it. Or you know somebody who's gone through puberty.
Or if you just know somebody whose kids have started the slamming door phase, as we talk about in the episode, this episode is for you.
We just learned that that's the first sign of puberty.
Yes.
Exactly. You are going to dig this. It is so fun talking to our guests today. Dr. Cara Natterson is a pediatrician and New York Times bestselling author of 10 books, including the Care and Keeping of You series. And Vanessa Kroll Bennett is a national bestselling author and puberty educator. Together, they are two of the most trusted voices on puberty. They co-host the Puberty podcast, and their best-selling book, This Is So Awkward, Modern Puberty Explained, became an instant hit featured on dozens of media outlets. And we hope you enjoy our conversation because we enjoyed our conversation.
It was fantabulous. I had so many questions.
We hope you enjoy our conversation with Vanessa and Cara. You want mom life to be easier. That's our goal too. Our mission is to raise more self-sufficient and independent kids, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're going to help you delegate and step back. Each episode will tackle strategies for positive discipline, making our kids more responsible and making our lives better in the process. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. So let's dig in to this talk about puberty, because I know through previous interviews that we have done with experts ranging from, I know you know Dr. Lisa D'Amour,
Love
Dr. Cheryl Ziegler, there is a lot of talk about puberty starting earlier and earlier and earlier. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How has puberty changed from when we were kids and going through it to what our kids are going through right now?
Yeah. So this is the part of the conversation where there's usually an audible gasp because puberty looks nothing like it looked when we all went through it. So it starts on average 2 to 3 years sooner than it did. The average age for a girl to go through puberty in this country, and frankly, we're not an outlier. Okay. This is global phenomenon, puberty happening earlier, but girls on average are between 8 and 9. Boys on average are between 9 and 10 when they enter puberty. What do we mean by enter puberty? We mean they show the physical or emotional signs of circulating sex hormones. Physically, those look like breast buds on girls, those breast buds that poke out of absolutely everything. Vanessa likes to say you could be wearing a down coat and those breast buds are poking out. In boys, it's penile and testicular growth, which we can get into because this is not as noticeable, right? In all kids, probably the earliest sign of puberty, I attribute this quote to Louise Greenspan, who is an amazing endocrinologist and researcher. The first sign of puberty is generally a slamming door. So when you start seeing mood swings in your tween, they are probably trying to manage the sex hormones that are coursing through their body and through their brains and changing the way they feel. And here's something else that's different about puberty. It starts earlier and it lasts much longer, like 2 to 3 times longer. It is stretching like taffy. So when we went through, it was like a 3 to 4 year sprint, and now it's a decade.
Do they have anything as to why?
So Louise, who we adore, she wrote a book called The New Puberty about 10 years ago, but it's still probably one of the best resources out there. She and other researchers are looking to identify the cause.
Yeah.
No one knows. No one knows. What it's going to boil down to is that there are going to be some common denominator chemicals that we generally refer to as endocrine disruptors. These are chemicals that mess with the way your hormones, that's endocrine hormone, mess with the way your hormones work in your body. There are going to be some endocrine disruptors that are identified that are in everything we eat and drink and breathe and put into and onto our bodies and all that. And that's going to be one big driver. We do know also, and Vanessa is very passionate about this point, so I'll pass the baton, that chronic stress is a very clear driver of earlier puberty. Vanessa, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to lay on people because everyone is so stressed out, kids and adults. But we do know that elevated levels of cortisol in the body, which is the physical manifestation of chronic stress, those hormones can actually tip into the sex hormones that get puberty up and running. So kids living under chronic stress, kids who experience adverse childhood experiences like trauma and abuse and food and housing insecurity, who live closer to crime, who live in poverty, those kids are at risk for earlier puberty, partially because of the chemical reality in their bodies of elevated levels of cortisol. We also know that for all of us, living under chronic stress over sustained periods of time isn't good for anyone, no matter their age, no matter their stage of puberty. And then there's the whole kind of high achieving culture risk and the chronic stress that kids under tremendous athletic, academic pressure. And I don't know if you guys have had Jenny Wallace on the podcast.
I want her.
So
I read the book.
Yeah,
Yes.
we'll connect you to her. She's great. And
Yay!
she looks, we're here. We're full service. We're full service. Joanne. She looks at all of the data and research that's been done out there about the chronic stress related to high achieving. And then layer on top of it, we live in a world with climate change. We have a totally bananas presidential election that we're in the run up to.
I'm having stress dreams every day, dreams. And I can guarantee you the election is part of it.
It is. I mean, I've never read so much escapist literature as I have over the last 6 months, and it's only going to get worse.
She's trying to save herself from going back into puberty.
Oh my God.
I know. I'm managing my
Be the next thing, right? Like there's going to be a second way. Well, wait a minute. That's perimenopause and menopause, which is a whole nother episode.
Yes. Yes.
It's funny because like I read escapist literature at night, but my escapist literature is thrillers. So real life actually doesn't look so bad compared to the escapist
strategy.
Nobody's killing anybody. No one's like kidnapping.
No one's locked in the trunk of a car.
They're just a little crazy.
Right. No one can't remember if they did kill someone or if they were just too drunk to remember if they killed someone.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
You've read The Girl on the Train, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yes.
And I have a new one that I lent my husband because I was like, you got to read something escapist. And I gave him a thriller, actually, that Emily Oster recommended in her newsletter called The Winner. I think.
I haven't heard of this one.
Yeah. Well, I'll book review it for you, Joanne, and then I'll let
Yes, please. The full service coming. And I interrupted you actually, so we didn't get to actually say what Jennifer Wallace's book was, and it was Never Enough.
Oh, Jenny's book is Never Enough. It came out almost exactly a year ago, and it looks at this high achievement culture and the impact on kids. And she cites lots and lots of excellent research and data done by researchers around the country. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a good read.
Yeah. I want to get a little bit into those causes of puberty, the high achievement, the climate change, the worry, the stress right after this.
So in our house, meal planning is a huge headache.
Mine too.
My husband and I like to eat more low carbs, kind of keto, but my daughter, well, you know her, she's a bit picky. HelloFresh has a new program called Build a Plate Meals. They are designed to let every member of your household create their perfect plate. So I have no more headaches trying to find a meal to accommodate everybody. I just find parts for everybody in the meal. And HelloFresh makes it so easy that everybody will enjoy what I'm making. And I am like so looking forward to trying out the Fiesta spiced chicken with avocado salsa and roasted sweet potatoes this week.
What I love is like HelloFresh's easy to follow recipes include pre-portioned ingredients.
And Green Chef and Every Plate, who you've heard us talk about before, they are now owned by HelloFresh. And now with a wider array of meal plans to choose from, I mean, seriously, there is something for everyone.
I have to mention for a limited time, kids eat free. They eat free. So go to HelloFresh.com/NGM kids to unlock this exclusive offer. 1 free kids meal per box for 2 months while your subscription is active. That's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/NGM kids.
HelloFresh, it's America's #1 meal kit.
I am a water connoisseur and I cannot handle it when it doesn't taste good.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I will like toss out water that I'm like, no, that's not good.
And that is why we feel like you guys have got to check out AquaTrue. AquaTrue purifiers use a 4-stage reverse osmosis purification process. And their countertop purifiers, they work with no installation or plumbing. I mean, that makes it work for even me. It removes 15 times more contaminants than your ordinary water pitcher filters and are specifically designed to combat chemicals in your water supply.
And they have water purifiers to fit every type of home, from installation-free countertop purifiers to higher capacity under the sink options. They even have a Wi-Fi connected purifier and mineral boost options. Yeah, it's really cool. So AquaTrue comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee and even makes a great gift. Today, our listeners, you receive 20% off any AquaTrue purifier. Just go to AquaTrue, that's AQUATRU.com and enter code NGM at checkout. That's 20% off any AquaTrue water purifier when you go to AquaTrue.com and use promo code NGM. It's no secret that weight loss drugs and GLP-1s are all anyone is talking about right now. I mean, I've had friends on them. I'm sure that you have heard about them as well. And I wanted to let you know that you don't need to be rich and famous in order to get access to these medications. Through hers, you can get access to a budget-friendly weight loss program personalized just for you. Now, hers is changing women's healthcare by providing access to GLP-1 weekly injections with the same active ingredient as Ozempic and Wegovy, as well as oral medication kits. So start your free online visit today at forhers.com/NGM. That's FORHERS.com/NGM for your personalized weight loss treatment options. forhers.com/NGM.
Not available everywhere, Hers weight loss includes compound products which are not approved nor verified for safety or effectiveness by FDA. Prescription products require provider consultation. Restrictions apply. Actual price to customer will depend on product and subscription plan purchase.
So talking about high achievement is like one of my favorite things because I think it's such a issue today in today's culture. My daughter goes to a high achieving high school and I am constantly fighting messages of high achievement about what you need to do to get into college, what classes you need to take to get into college. There's a huge like push, and I'm sure that other schools are doing this to kids too, about this thing called like an AP medallion, or I'm not sure exactly what it is, but they're taking like these really stressful courses just to get this little seal on their diploma, which I see as meaning absolutely nothing whatsoever and like taking all the fun out of their lives.
I can't even tell you where my high
Yeah.
school diploma is.
Exactly. So, like, since we know high achievement is an issue and these other stress things are an issue, is there anything that parents can do to kind of soften the blows at home
Mm.
so that they
Yeah.
won't affect our kids so much and won't like cause these huge impacts to their process?
So I have a couple of things to say that are going to sound very unrelated, but I promise I will tie them together. So one is Vanessa and I did a book tour in the fall and winter when our book, This Is So Awkward, came out, and we spoke in front of 55 schools. And one of the things that I was most surprised by, I had never heard schools self identify as high achieving. In my life, I'd never heard that phrase. And we heard it a number of times on the book tour.
Interesting.
And I think so. I want to hold that thought in one hand, right? Just the branding of education and what these kids are exposed to in terms of how schools are branding and marketing themselves. I think this is an important piece to hold. Okay, now I want to hold in another hand. Good thing I only have two hands because I'm only going to do two things. I want to talk for a second about Jonathan Haidt's book. I was with a group of pediatricians the other night, a group of pediatricians and Vanessa, who is an honorary pediatrician at this point. And we were talking about Jonathan Haidt's book. And I said, I wondered if he was talking about the wrong generation, that the real anxious generation were the parents. And this other pediatrician said, that is so funny. I saw the title of his book and I thought, finally, someone wrote a book about the anxiety that parents carry and how it is translating into this thing that is really weighing down their kids. So I now want to bring those two threads together because the very first thing that we can do as trusted adults for any kid. So you don't have to be a parent. You can be a parent, grandparent, coach, mentor, teacher, healthcare provider. I don't care what your role is. If you love and care about a tween or a teen or a 20 something, and you actually look at your behavior, you look at your language, look at all the things that are influencing you around the world, and then you clock it and you actively engage in conversation with that kid about why those pressures do not translate for you, why you don't care about that AP badge. It's not just that you don't care, which, by the way, hallelujah that you don't care,
I don't
but it's
care. Yeah.
right. But it's saying to a kid, I just want you to understand, like, I think it's so great that you're working so hard. Here's why I don't care. Let's be in conversation. I want to hear why you care, and I want to share with you why I don't. Why is that important? Because if you come at it from the perspective that I'm not going to validate the crazy thing that you're doing because you're trying to get a good housekeeping seal of approval on your
Yes.
homework, right?
Mhm.
Which feels
That's
nuts,
exactly what it is.
right? If you come at it like that, what are they going to
They're gonna
do?
fight.
They just shut down. They're
Yeah,
going to
shut
fight
down.
and shut
Yeah.
down, right?
Mhm.
And
So if you validate, and Vanessa is queen of validating kids when she speaks to them, like she's the best validator I know. It doesn't mean she agrees with everything, but you validate.
you also want to make sure they're like taking care of themselves. I mean, part of it is this stress causes
Do you gum
kids
stuff?
not to take care. So, are they getting enough sleep? Are they eating enough and the kinds of foods that are going to nourish their bodies? Are they moving their bodies enough and yet not so much that they're actually at risk of injury or overuse? Like, are they showering? Are they washing their hair? Right? We think of all the things that fall by the wayside in terms of people taking care of themselves and the four pillars of health. We actually just did a podcast episode about them because sometimes we get so far down the path of like meta high level concepts when talking to kids that we forget about the really basic things they need to do to take care of themselves. And if you put those forward, like, hey, you got to get at least 8 hours of sleep a night, all of a sudden they have to make different choices throughout the day in terms of how they spend their day. And I believe, and this is a process I've been through with my own kids, is sometimes you have to help them take things off their plate. So that may mean having them take fewer APs. That may mean having them play for a different club sports team or move dance companies or join a different drama troupe, whatever it is, because if they cannot feel well, then something needs to change and they need our help sifting through what choices they're making.
They do absolutely need our help, and I know Bree wants to say something
Yeah.
along these lines because she has experienced this with her son in
Yeah, yeah. So,
particular.
like,
Yeah.
everything you're saying is exactly my son's junior year of high school.
Mhm.
So, being divorced, there is a certain degree of, like, autonomy I try to make sure that my kids have because, again, my ex is very much my ex. We are polar opposites when it comes to parenting. So, I try to give them choices and to let them be more in control of what's going on in their life because obviously some things they can't. Anyways, last year, it was nothing but AP and honors classes. We also have something called 0 hour in our district. I don't know if every district does that. That's where they have a choice to take an extra class before school even starts. So that meant my son was at school at 6:15 a.m.
Oh my
It's now
god.
illegal in California. That actually was a thing, and it's illegal.
So, like, they say
Yay for
Arizona is like
California.
mini California. I'll embrace that. Yeah, bring that over. So he
Mhm.
had 0 hours, so he'd get to school at like 6:15, and then he had after school band practice and clubs and a job. And I was
Oh my
trying
god.
so hard to be like, listen, anybody that knew me in the last year, my son was a jerk. He was a jerk all year long, just a jerk, jerk, jerk.
Mhm.
And you could see it. He was exhausted. Like, I found out he was like staying up all night sometimes because, like,
Yeah.
you don't know that's
Yeah.
happening. They shut off their lights. You go to bed, they go to bed. And next thing you know, you find out later, oh no, he was up to 4 a.m. and then got an hour of sleep and then went on to school again. So, it was so hard seeing that happen, and first of all, A, not having
Yeah.
control of his schedule 24/7 because every other week he went to his dad's
Mhm.
house, and his dad was like, "I deal with it my way, leave my way alone." So I couldn't say, like, "I'm going to make you quit this," because when he
Yeah,
would go to dad's house, that was not the conversation, right? So
Right.
all I could do is just be
right.
like, "Think about how your body feels." And I'm like
Right.
and just talking about, like, I know that you don't think this because this is the other thing about teen thinking in that stage, right? They think that they can do anything and that their body can bounce back. And I'm like, I get it. It works right now. But by the end of the school year, if you keep this up, suddenly your memory is not going to work the way it used to.
Yeah.
So here's the thing though in teen thinking that I want your advice on because the sleep issue is very, very
Hmm.
real. I know in
Yes.
California too, they also made a law that schools can't start before a
Right.
I love
specific
it.
time. And I know I love that. I love that because my daughter, sleep is a hard thing. Like obviously teens don't produce melatonin the same time we do.
No, they
And
don't.
she is up way later than I am. Sometimes I'm sometimes not even going to bed until like 1 or 2 a.m. And it's her doing schoolwork. It's not her on a phone. It's not her like watching things. She is like doing her schoolwork. And when I talk to her about these things, she's like, "Well, mom, I just don't have a choice right now.
Mhm.
This is just how my life is right
Mhm.
now."
Yeah.
Completely different kid during
Yeah.
the summer, like so much happier, so much lighter, and then the school year hits and she doesn't think she has a choice. What can we do
Yeah. So
with
let's just
that?
talk about the science
Yeah.
behind it for 1 second, because you mentioned all the contributing factors, and it's really
Yeah.
important to recognize them. So, number one, melatonin is the natural chemical we make that tells our body to wind down and go to sleep. Okay. Babies, young kids, and us, we all start churning out melatonin around 7:30, 8:30. We're ready to go to bed. Teenagers and young adults, but especially teenagers, that melatonin starts releasing later and later and later into the night. And they are legit not tired
Mhm.
until 11, 11:30, 12, 12:30. Right? So that is biology. Then you layer on top of it the amount of work they have and the good, hardworking students who are diligent and doing the thing, and they're not on their phone, but they're on a laptop, they're on a screen, they're doing the thing that
Yeah.
they need to do. Their brain is being stimulated. And then we haven't even mentioned the third, which is they deserve to be and need to be social creatures.
Mhm.
And the way they engage and when they engage is after school ends and after their after school stuff is done and after their homework is done, which is in the middle of the freaking night. So all of these things ladder up to interfere with sleep because it's not like their life starts at 10 o'clock the
Yeah.
next
Right.
morning. It doesn't,
Mhm.
right? So, what do? I'll tell you what we do. We educate kids. That's what we do. We teach them what sleep does. And I'll just give you like the quick top line sleep controls your mood, it resets your mood. Sleep is the time you file memories. So pulling an all-nighter before a test, you will not do
Right.
as well on the test as actually going to bed. That's when all the memories are filed in accessible places in your brain. Sleep is when you grow. Okay. Now, your daughter's 6'1", so I mean, there's that,
I
right?
feel like
Yes.
I can let that go.
Uh-huh. Yes, but for
Forget
the
this. Taylor Swift is 5'11". I need to shrink. No.
exactly. For the other 99%, that is a real motivator to get them into bed. And the fourth is sleep controls our metabolism. It changes the way we burn through energy the next day. When we do not get enough sleep, our body is cued to take all the calories that we take in the next day and store them as fat because one day we may need it because this body is not taking good care of me. And that is where we see dramatic shifts in metabolism. When you educate kids about that, then kids become very invested in their own sleep and they can retrain their brains to release melatonin earlier. It takes a lot of time and practice, but they can engage in
Yeah.
wind down rituals that will help cue their brain to want to go to bed earlier.
Mhm.
And Joanne, I also think it's getting to something Bree said earlier, which is teaching her the skills to clock when she feels good and lighter and when she doesn't, and figuring out ways to get sort of like micro doses of that lightness into her week. So, like, it's summer. She's probably outside. She's probably moving her body. She's probably with friends, whatever it is. She doesn't have hours and hours of homework. And
Yeah.
so, a conversation that sounds like, hey, I've noticed in the summers, your mood is different. You smile more, you laugh more. I love seeing this side of you. I wish we could have more of that side of you for your sake during the year. What are some small things we could do during the week that it gives you a little bit of a taste of summer throughout the year? And just you're noticing, you're not judging the pressure she feels. You're not adding to the pressure by telling her she needs to like change everything, but you are helping her with the self reflection of saying, I feel good at this time. I don't feel so great at this time. I went through the same process with my daughter who was like, I have to do everything I can. I have to take every class I can. I have to join every
Yes.
team I can. And I finally said, it's too much and you have to choose. And so, how do we get to a decision point? Let's walk through, let's do a pros and cons list. Let's sit with it. Let's talk to some older kids who've been through this journey before.
Right.
What was worth it? What wasn't worth it? Older kids are often such amazing advisors because if they're just out the other side, they're not you, and they're incredibly thoughtful because they've lived it and they've now reflected on the trade-offs they made in order to make those choices.
Love that. And the self reflection piece and engaging her in the self reflection piece, we do that a lot. It's been like a very big process. And I think like when we coach moms to do this, and if you're listening to this right now as a listener, it's easy to think like could be just one thing you do, but this is such a long process as a parent to get through to kids. And sometimes like conversations I had with my child at like when she was in 8th grade and she's a junior are now popping up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, you were listening. And this
Yes.
why is like having an effect
That's
then.
right.
So if you're listening right now, like it is a long, long process, but it's totally worth it in the end because I think the self-reflection, it goes with everything that kids do. It goes with,
Right.
their sleep. It goes with monitoring their own screen time use and
Mhm.
how they feel when they're like looking at their
Mhm.
devices. And it goes to like their relationships with people as well. And it's such like a lot of people, I think, fear puberty, going through puberty with their kids. But it's such an interesting change to see kids go through it. Now, with girls, I feel like I'm a little more prepared that way. But with boys, I don't really know what I'm doing here because there are certain, like, body characteristic aspects of it where I know my son, he would be mortified, even at 11, me bringing that up. Like, I really want my husband, ideally, in the perfect world to do it. But, like, what can moms of boys do who are going through puberty? And we'll talk about that right after this.
Today's podcast is sponsored by MIDI Health. I have to tell you guys, if you are a woman over 40 like I am, and you have started dealing with some crazy stuff like hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, vaginal dryness, weight gain, all of these things that you just are like, what the heck is happening to my body? I'm here to tell you, you don't have to accept it as another part of aging. All of these symptoms can actually be related to perimenopause and menopause. And yes, it can start in your 40s, but I have found a solution. MIDI Health. Seriously, this place is amazing. You can have virtual visits. Their clinicians are experts in menopause. They understand the frustrations and they also have full range of care options for you. Schedule a virtual visit and you'll come out of the experience feeling heard and with a plan that will work for you. Book your appointment with MIDI Health today. Visit joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
Lynn, this time of year, parenting can be such a flusterclux.
You've come to the right place. I'm Lynn Lyons, and I've been treating anxious families for over 30 years.
I'm Lynn's sister-in-law and co-host Robin Hudson.
Join us for Flusterclux, a podcast for parents who worry.
Wait, that's everybody.
Yeah, these last few years have felt like one long anxiety attack for so many.
Why do you think parents are always surprised that a podcast about anxiety relates to them, even if no one in their house has an anxiety disorder?
Well, worry is human. Everyone does it, and anxiety shows up when we face uncertainty.
All the parenting tips you've taught me have been essential.
I love to break it down into skills we need to manage worry in our families.
We've covered so many topics: depression, burnout, meltdowns, perfectionism.
Don't forget scary mothers-in-law.
Right, but of course that's not my mother-in-law.
Because that's my mother.
And a listener.
As a psychotherapist, I like to teach parents and kids how to respond to everyday moments in healthy ways.
Managing anxiety really can be taught.
It really can. And I'll even tell you what to say.
We talk about serious stuff, but without being too serious.
Anxiety wants everything serious. Anxiety doesn't stand a chance when we're laughing, even about the tough stuff.
Are you overwhelmed by the things that get in the way of you doing what you want to do? Are you looking for ways to simplify life to better align with your values? Do you want to create space in your schedule so you have room for more of the good stuff? Play, joy, relationships, gratitude, and more? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I invite you to check out Edit Your Life, a podcast to help you edit the unnecessary from your life so you have more room to enjoy the awesome. Through episodes with me, Christine Coe, and a range of super smart, compassionate, and thoughtful guests, you'll come away with big picture insights and practical ways to declutter your home, schedule, and mental space without getting bogged down by perfection. I have always believed that small moments and actions matter tremendously. My goal is to help you find agency and space in your life through doable baby steps that will leave you feeling accomplished instead of overwhelmed. Check out Edit Your Life wherever you enjoy your podcasts.
So, talking about boys when it comes to puberty, what can moms of boys do to really help their sons through it, even if we might not be very comfortable with it ourselves?
Because we're terrified that all we're going to do is find crunchy towels and socks, and they're going to ask us about body parts that we don't have.
Okay, so I'm going to reframe the question. We will get to crunchy socks and towels. But I want to reframe the question. Instead of thinking about talking to boys through this decade of puberty as only about the anatomical stuff or only about what comes out of their bodies in various forms, think of talking about puberty as just another way of creating connection with your kid. And so you may not be able to talk to them about what it feels like to have an erection or a wet dream or anything like that. Doesn't mean you can't talk to them about that. And Cara is wonderful at talking about, even if you don't have the equipment, you can have the conversations. But my reframe is you are creating trust and connection and lines of communication with your kid. And conversations about puberty are not always about the anatomical body parts, the physiology. Conversations during this time are about friendship and loneliness and love and respect and joy and sadness and laughter, lots and lots and lots of laughter. And sometimes you don't cover any of the actual specific, quote, puberty topics, but you're just there with your kid and you're the adult who shows up, who's available when a question comes up, when there's an issue, when there's curiosity. So if we think of it instead as an opportunity to be in conversation about really anything at all during this decade of life, it feels less intimidating. So it could be about like, oh, what are you playing on Xbox right now? Because I am such an idiot when it comes to gaming, but I want to know what you're playing. Or who's on your fantasy football team this week? Or, hey, let's make dinner together because I have this new recipe and I think you're going to really like it. And then you never know what's going to come out in the midst of that conversation that's actually really valuable and important in your relationship with your kid.
I love hearing that because I'm so afraid my son is going to become an emotionally unavailable male. Like, and so we have those conversations a lot. We dig in deep to emotions.
I want to go
Yes.
here because we have to address the elephant in the room, which is boy silence, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things that makes you afraid that he is going to become emotionally unavailable is that there's no data here. I'm just telling you, scientist who's listening, go study this because someone needs to. As testosterone starts to surge around the tween and teen body, their volume knob turns down. And some of them go from being huge talkers to slightly less huge talkers. And some go from being 2-word answers to grunts or
That's
nothing at
mine.
all.
Interesting.
And that was
Okay.
mine. It is painful. It is so terrifying because what you think is what you're seeing is a kid who has no emotional capacity. That is not what you are seeing. Everything Vanessa just said applies to a silent boy. They want to be in conversation. They just have this hormone in their body that is telling them to be internal and to process quietly and to not communicate. Some of them, it's temperamental. Some of them, they're just
Okay.
observers, right? And they're not big sharers. And we gender this, and it's just how they were born. It's just their personality. So here's what I did. And I actually wrote a book called Decoding Boys about this phenomenon.
It's a
I'm
great
writing
book.
it down right now.
I will tell you, this was one of the hardest things I ever managed as a parent. And I know a fair amount about the body and the brain, and this was a steep climb. I used to sit on the other side of my son's closed door, and I would say through the door, buddy, I am here. I'm just going to hang out here for about 10 minutes. I'm really interested in what's going on with you. I'd really like to have a conversation. So I'm going to shut up now, which is hard for me. If you have not noticed, I'm going to shut up now and I'll be here if you're interested in talking. And I will say and I didn't make this up, by the way, I had very smart, wise parents who were in my practice years earlier who taught me this. I learned everything I know from smart parents. It took several silent sessions before he started to open up. And now he is 19 years old. And we have this thing where when I'm ready to talk about something, I will go in his room and I will lay on his bed and I will just look up at the ceiling and he's perched somewhere else on a chair or whatever. And we do not make eye contact. I'm just there and present. And I will start talking to the ceiling and he will just let it go and start talking to me. So is that his personality? Is that his maleness? I don't know where one ends and the other begins, but what I can tell you is Vanessa is 1000% right. They want to be in these conversations. We just have to find the key that unlocks the door for each of these individual kids. And for boys in general, conversations with their parents, both, but especially with their moms for whatever reason, tend to get really, really quiet. And it is our job to constantly say, I'm here, I care, I'm interested, I'm not going away, not to be in their face, but to be present. And it changes everything. And they eventually emerge out the other side. And it is the best feeling ever.
That's fantastic.
I love that.
I mean, they come back. There's this fear that there's a grief and a loss. And we hear this in every keynote we give. There's a parent who raises their hand and says, I used to have this loving child who I was so close to, and I feel like I've lost him. And they do come back. So if anyone is listening who is feeling that grief, who is feeling that loss, they come back, they go through the other end of this stage, and they're so interesting and so funny. And maybe they're still quiet, but they're there with you. So don't worry that they're never going to come back to you.
Can we get to crunchy socks though?
I do think that that's great though, because I think a lot of moms, we carry that in silence, that shame that we did something wrong, and that's why they're not talking anymore. I did some, and so I'm not going to tell.
No, we failed
I'm not
them.
going to tell anybody that. Like maybe my best friend at most, but I'm not. It's not something that we talk about when we get together for our mom dinners and chatting with our.
Or on Instagram. You're looking on Instagram and everyone else is surrounded by their children and everybody looks happy. And you're like, well, my family vacation sucked because everybody was arguing the whole time.
Yeah. And my son insisted that he did not want to be there no matter what I did.
That he hated me and the whole experience. And I just blew my vacation budget for the year on a miserable vacation, but it's only me. And no, it's not only you. It happens to all of us.
Okay, now crunchy socks. Let's tackle that.
This is something I have not had to even think about yet. So I need to get prepared.
Okay. So here's the deal. There are things that happen with the male body that are unique to the male body. And you got two choices. You can educate yourself and learn about them and talk to your kid about them, or you could put your head in the sand and pretend they don't happen. And then when they do happen, you have a kid who is left completely flat-footed and has no idea what to do. Our most viral clips on social media are whenever we say words like penis or wet dream, because kids are starving for information about what's normal in their body, what they should expect, and how to manage it. So here's one. Wet dreams happen. They happen sometimes every night, sometimes almost never, sometimes actually never, and most of the time intermittently, and you can't predict how much and when and where and this, that, and the other. They need to know there's nothing wrong with them. It's totally normal. It's completely expected if it happens. It's completely expected if it doesn't happen. And oh my gosh, by the way, you can take the sheets off your bed and you can clean them and it's totally manageable, right? Like, there's no shame. It just is what it is.
It is what it is. That is interesting to hear because like what age do you think we should start talking about like wet dreams? Like how do you introduce this?
I mean, wet dreams don't happen at the beginning of male puberty because the testosterone has to be circulating in the body for a couple of years to get the testicles up and running as real factories so that sperm production happens and ejaculation happens. So it's not like breast buds, which are a first sign and everyone can see them. It's further along in the process. And obviously every kid is going to enter puberty at a different age. And we should have said that there's averages, but there are early bloomers and late bloomers and people right in the middle. And so I actually find you can do it. I mean, you have an 11-year-old, Joanne?
Yes.
Okay. So I wouldn't go like straight for wet dreams because there's some like foundational knowledge.
Yeah.
Make sure your kid knows the word penis and not just the word, D-I-C-K
he knows all of it.
Yes.
I used to be a 5th grade teacher and I had to teach
For
human
the
growth and
boys.
development.
For boys.
So I'm pretty comfortable.
For boys. So
For boys.
That was funny. Interesting there.
So he's in great hands. And the way you want to frame it, and this is, I think, a great way with any of the tricky topics, not just wet dreams, but porn, for example, or even sex, which is, hey, have you ever heard the phrase wet dreams? I know it's kind of a funny phrase. Have you ever heard that before? And they'll often say like, oh, yes. And you say, do you know what it means? Oh, yes. And you say, well, how would you describe it? I have no idea. So like, they feel like they're supposed to know everything, but they don't actually, like they've heard it. It's in the water. Like 69, my kid, my 11-year-old, this is now several years ago, used the phrase 69 as the punchline to every joke. Joanne, I'm sure you're
Yes.
hearing this. Yes.
My
Okay.
kids are doing that too. And I'm like, guys,
What?
you don't know what that means. Do you know what that means? And I told them, and they're like, what?
Yes.
They're like, this is
Bingo.
just, it's just a funny number, Mom. It's
No,
on TikTok.
right.
They don't even have TikTok. And they're like,
So,
it's on TikTok.
right. So, Joanne, exactly what you did. You say, hey, I'm not sure you know what that phrase means, because if you did, I'm not sure you'd want to use it. Do you know what it
Princess
means?
Bride.
No.
I don't think that means what you think it means.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
I
Exactly.
have the funniest story for something like that. My son's friends, they all went to a movie. Like the moms, we got together, they took him to a movie, and then we all met up at like a pizza place afterwards. And they were like talking at the table, and one of his friends was like, "Oh yeah, like McGriddle." And I'm like, that doesn't, I don't think that means what you think it means. And I like look it on a Google. I'm like, I'm gonna Google that for you right now. And I'm like, nope. And I show the other mom, and like they're like looking at us. They're like, what does it mean? Like these two 11-year-old boys, what does it mean? And I come and I show my son, and he reads off the screen, and he's like, oh,
Okay, can
no.
I ask what that means? Because now I feel like I'm out of the loop. Or can you not talk about it?
So like McGriddle is a sex act, and think of like syrup being like poured over, and like, yeah. So it's in a public place. And so these boys are learning at it in a public place. And you could actually see their expressions when they find out what exactly it means, this phrase that they have been using casually to everyone. And it was such an enlightening experience, because like when kids realize it, they're like, hold on.
Okay, what I love about that story is you did not
Yeah.
shame them at all.
No.
You're like, right? You're like, vocabulary check.
Yes.
And it's such a great way into the conversation, because what you have showed not just your child, but every other child who, by the way, given the fact that you were a 5th grade teacher who taught health education, you were going to be this person. Anyways, all of those kids are going to come to you and sit around your kitchen table forever and ask you all the questions. Why? Because you just displayed that I'm totally fine with conversation so long as you understand what the heck you're saying. Right?
Yeah. It's so interesting though, like when you're in groups of people, because one girl wanted to know what it was, and I was going to tell her, but her mom was right there, and she's like, no, I don't want you to know that
Yeah.
information.
That's important,
That's a
Joanne,
boundary, but,
because, I will always say to a parent, hey, I'm super comfortable talking about stuff in my house, but I know that my house is different from other people's houses. What do I have permission to talk about? And what would you prefer I send them to you to
Yeah.
ask about?
Mhm.
Because it's not our job. I mean, it is actually all of our jobs to educate people,
Yeah.
but it's not our jobs to educate our children's friends. Nobody's signing up for that. And so, getting permission.
But you can't always do it. And so there's another way through if it's coming up in the moment. And I've seen you do this, Vanessa, and you do it beautifully, which is to say, I'd really love to explain that. I don't know if your parents are going to be cool with that. So I think you should ask them. And then frankly, you can backdoor and say to that parent, listen, just so you know, this came up. I didn't answer the question. I told them they should talk to you, because you don't, especially as kids get older, you don't always know the parents. You don't always have those precursor
Right.
conversations, right?
Mhm.
And they come
Right.
home and they're like, Mrs. Bennett taught me what 16
Oh, yeah. And you're like, "But how it went down, I swear."
It's interesting because the dynamic changes as they get older. Because like 11, 12-year-olds, they would totally go to their parents for that. But the teen relationship with parents gets so tricky, where a lot of teens, they don't feel comfortable going to their own parents. And it just becomes such a tricky situation as an adult in like one of my daughter's friends' lives. I want to explain these things to her, and yet I feel like I need to keep my mouth shut, because I know this particular parent would not enjoy
Right.
that. And so
Yeah.
it's almost like I have to educate my daughter so well that if it comes up in conversation with her and the friend, I'm
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
not responsible for
Yeah.
it.
I mean, like I was listening to one of your podcast episodes recently about talking about sex with your kids. And it was like, it's not like if we don't tell them, they're not going to know. They're going to find it. And it's probably going to
Or they're going to find misinformation that they're going to
it's
go to
probably
TikTok.
gonna be
Exactly.
Yeah.
not what you wanted them to know. Like it's either going to be completely wrong,
That's right.
or they're just going to flat out end up even like watching something that they're not supposed to be watching. So like,
Right.
yeah, it's You can try to stick your head in the sand, but it just
It's a
doesn't
tricky
work.
time. Yeah.
No.
Well, I could
No,
talk
we
to you
need to do
both
another
all day,
episode.
all day
We need
long
to do another
because
episode.
you're
Done.
We'll come back
I love it.
anytime. Anytime.
Yes.
But we love to end on a positive and exciting note. So what is coming up for you that you're really excited about?
We have the same thing coming up the week that this episode is airing.
Ooh.
We are moving our children into college. I'm not going to make that Vanessa's thing, but
Oh, I was
We-
like, what do we both have?
what do we
coming?
have? What do we have? Yes, our seconds are going to college.
And we're going to try to get them on our podcast, actually, to talk about being the silent.
it'll
second.
sound like this.
You could hear a pin drop. And then we, on the work front, what we have coming up is we have soft launched a membership, which has a searchable library of all the puberty content we have ever created, podcasts, newsletters, videos, and it also has an AI bot where you can ask it any questions, and it's trained on all the books we've ever written, all the podcast transcripts, all the newsletters. So you can literally say, how do I talk to my son about wet dreams? And it will provide you an answer, scripting, further reading, further listening, more resources to have the conversation.
The answer usually starts with something like, wow, that's a rough one, but here we go.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So our conversation really got into everything regarding puberty, but I want to talk about the most uncomfortable part, the whole dealing with guys in puberty, Brie.
Right.
Dealing with our son. So I have a fun way to do that. Let's play
Okay.
Would You Rather?
Oh, God. All right. Oh.
Would you rather find crunchy socks in the corner of your child's bedroom or stumble onto a text message that you don't want to know about that they're having with a friend? And so I'll just leave that open. Just think of your worst case scenario text message.
Okay.
So,
All right. So do I answer or do I not answer?
Yeah.
I
no,
answer?
What would you rather do? What would you rather have?
Oh, God. Okay. I could just say from personal experience, having had both, I would say, I guess, all right, honestly, I'd rather deal with the crunchy socks, but,
That's what I would rather deal with too.
Right.
Because you're like, oh, okay. With the text message, first of all, why are you reading their text? You have to explain that if you have to deal with that, even though
I guess I would
it just
say
pops up.
yeah, I guess I would say mine wasn't
Pops
a
up.
text. Mine was I was told something I didn't want to know. So it
Yes.
was okay. So knowledge is power and also depressing sometimes. But you're right.
It is. Yeah.
You have to explain why you read the text.
Why you read the text
That's
and then
t-
how to broach the conversation and then deal with all the emotions from it. Crunchy
Yeah.
socks, you're like, laundry basket. pff,
Right.
Easy.
Right. Okay. So here's mine then. All right, I get to do one for you.
Okay.
Would you rather know about something that a friend of yours child is doing that they shouldn't be doing? Right? So let's
Uh-huh.
say in this scenario, your kids are friends and your kid told you something about your friend's child.
Yep.
That is, we'll say again, puberty related, something that is kind of embarrassing that you're you can't just whatever it is. Or would you rather find a bottle of lube in your kid's bathroom? So one, it's just an
Is-
embarrassing thing that you found. Second, you have to decide if you're going to have an embarrassing conversation with somebody else and try to explain how
Yeah.
you found out. So
How
which
good
one?
is the friend? Is it you or is it another friend?
Let's say it's a friend that you're not you cannot talk to this friend about everything. So
Oh.
it's someone who's a friend but not a best friend. So you've got that
Okay.
certain level of unfamiliarity
think-
with them.
I would rather hear that because I probably would not even broach that subject with that person, honestly. I would just keep it to myself and be like, oh, human nature. I wouldn't even have the embarrassing conversation. I would, guess, they're not a best friend. I don't know them.
I don't owe them anything.
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
definitely that. Definitely
Definitely-
that. 'Cause then
definitely
I
that
could
one.
just avoid and deny.
Oh my God. All right.
No. But yeah, it's tricky though. But this was a super fun episode.
Oh my gosh. And it was crazy because most of our episodes, like we try to keep them close to 30 minutes. This one went long because there was so much to talk about. And when we were done, we were like, we have to do another follow-up episode because there is so much we could broach about this topic. I think there are so many questions, and I'm really excited about their membership program. I think that's awesome.
Getting
And
parents all the information.
and the AI thing they were talking about, how you could just type in there and be like, how do I talk to my kids about, whatever? And they're like, whoa, that's rough. Let's start with, and then
Yeah, well, that's rough. Yeah.
It's
That's pretty much what you have to do.
I think that's pretty much any conversation about puberty or just in general, the awkward conversations. Like, so I'm dealing with teens. So we're in the midst of like the sex conversations. Like, okay, we're past the birds and the bees, to be crystal clear. We're past that part. And we're trying to get into the embarrassing questions that you don't typically, that like you and I, our generation did not ask our parents and did not bring
No.
up to their parents. And okay,
that
like,
we like read through 17 in Cosmo to like find the answers to these questions.
well, I'm just going to tell you like TMI, I had a bladder infection for like over a month when I was at college because I was too embarrassed to tell anybody because I didn't know what was happening. So it's like so like we're into like that level of conversations about like when this starts to feel like this or if this happens and like this is what sex should be like and what consent is and oh my God, there's just so much. There's just so much that I feel like I am completely unprepared for, even though I know I'm prepared more than the average bear. But
yeah.
it's
Yeah, I know.
still
And you're probably actually being brought a lot more topics than the average bear because you have a trusting relationship with your kids.
which is
Because
both
a lot of
pro and a
parents,
con.
it brings a fair amount of stress. Like
Mhm.
sometimes, you know how you look at like they say this in movies, like the happiest people are the most oblivious.
Yes.
They don't know what's going on. And sometimes you're like, I kind of want to be a happy person and I just don't want to know what's going on.
I know.
But it always ends up being like a long-term thing though, because if you're oblivious, I can promise you it's not going to be happy forever. In the
Oh.
way like,
Right? And there's nothing worse than knowing that your kids are struggling with something and you can't help them. And
yeah,
I think that in this area of the awkwardness of puberty and sex talks and like all the other jazz that comes along with the awkward topics, knowing that your kid can at least come to you when they're scared or frustrated or something's confusing is always going to be much more comforting to you than the comfort of being oblivious.
exactly.
So,
Exactly. So with that, let's make our fight against obliviousness. We're in this fight together. If you're listening, you know how hard it is. You've probably tried some things already. So we're with you here. And until next time, remember, the best mom's a happy mom. Take care of you. We'll talk to you later.
thanks for stopping by.
If you're a parent, I invite you to join us at the Mindful Mama podcast, where it's all about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. With sometimes hilarious and always thought-provoking experts and friends, at Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm Hunter Clark Fields, and I can't wait to see you there. Listen in to the Mindful Mama podcast.